I just hit record.
Yep. Okay. Well, good afternoon, welcome, and thank you for taking a few minutes out of your day to attend our live webinar, New Ceramic Possibilities on the Horizon with James Choi. My name is Amy Donato, and I will be facilitating with a little bit of help this afternoon. This afternoon, James is not only going to share some of his secrets to achieving incredibly lifelike aesthetics utilizing a combination of MiYO liquid ceramics in conjunction with new MiYO powder ceramics on minimally reduced zirconia substructures, he's also going to share with you some exciting new advancements in the areas of digital shade taking that were used in the cases throughout his presentation that really allow technicians to more accurately hit shades and replicate details found in patients' national dentition. Before I introduce and turn the webinar over to James, as Kevin mentioned, we do have a lot of people here, so I just want to go over a couple of housekeeping items. We expect the training to be about 45 to 50 minutes in duration, and we will have open Q&A at the end. Because we have so many people here this afternoon, we have everyone on mute, and that's really just to avoid any feedback. But don't panic when we get to the end. For the Q&A, we can unmute your line if you'd like to speak to James directly. If you don't feel comfortable speaking, you can let us know you have a question using the Q&A function or the chat function. You can raise your hand, we can unmute your line. There's lots of options. So whatever your preference is fine with us. Now, many of you probably already know who James is, but just to be sure, please allow me to give a brief introduction. James is a dental ceramist who has worked very closely with Jensen and our subsidiary ChemMichael to bring the MiYO liquid ceramic system to life. Prior to opening his own lab in Connecticut, James resided in California, where he most recently held the title of lab director for the dental technology program at UCLA, where he was responsible for training students to be some of the very best dental technicians our industry has to offer. Rooted in his belief that every technician really needs the creative freedom to bring their monolithic restorations to life, MiYO, or as we like to call it, make it your own, was born. So without further ado, James, why don't you go ahead and get your presentation rolling?
Thank you, Kevin, Aim. Always a great introduction to start off. Thank you so much, guys. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this unique webinar. This session, I want to kind of bring out all the problems that we're dealing with, address those problems one by one, and then come up with a solution and maybe some sample cases for you guys to see with your own eyes to understand that there is a new horizon right in front of us. So this presentation is really for our new ceramic possibilities on the horizon, which is the MiYO powder ceramic, which I've been begging Jensen for about 5 years now. And I'm very excited that this has come to fruition, and I'm here to share some of these experiences with all of you. So let's just get started. Before we really get into color, some of the challenges that we have to see in value and color and shade taking and all of those things, I want to really touch base on the zirconia and the classes of zirconia, because I still feel like a lot of people out there are pretty confused with the different classes and why we choose those different classes to make our restorations as best as possible, because every situation is different. Depending on the personal customized patient situation, we should be, as a technician, should be able to choose our underlying materials efficiently and execute those preparation parts so our ceramic parts are more pleasant and much more controlled in that sense. When I feel like I have a case and I'm ready to pick up my brush for my ceramic or my finishing applications, I want all my processes and all the previous steps to be very accurate in precision, so that once I pick up my brush, it's just enjoyment, right? So I want to really touch base here and really get into a little bit more detail. I know some of you guys have seen this, but I'm going to drill this in as many and oftentimes as I can. So there are zirconias in the market that we are we have availability to. Sorry, I just like completely stuttered right there. But so there are two very key characteristics of zirconia that we have to understand, right? There are three different types of zirconia classes. There are the 3Ys, which is our first generation zirconias, the 5Y, which is the counterpart of the second generation zirconia. The counterpart meaning when the 3Y first came out, everybody started complaining about the zirconia looks dead. It's like white gold. It's nothing near aesthetic. So then the manufacturers and the companies came up with the compensation of a 5Y zirconia, which is quite translucent, very close to an LT or an HT ingot of a lithium disilicate, which I felt like it was two ends of the spectrum, and we needed something in between. So when we look at zirconia, so there is a compensation factor here. When we increase strength, it will increase opacity and it will decrease translucency, as you can see in this slide. As the translucency of the zirconia increases, the strength and the opacity decreases. So usually, typically for my lab and for my work, most of the posterior regions, I stay within the 5Y and the 4Y, depending on how much space I have. Majority of my single posteriors I would choose a 5Y. But if there is some space, some good clearance, and if there is a lot of clearance and a lot of space, that space will absorb that much light. So I will compensate for that and I would choose a 4Y. But typically I would do a 5Y. And a 3Y is typically used for coping, something that can mask the underlying structure, or I would use something on an all-on-X with the 3Y. But with the 4Y, today's 4Y that's available from many other companies, including Jensen, is strong and aesthetic enough for an all-on-X. So I believe in the near future, 4Y will be a majority of the choices that we would have. And then 5Y will be an extension, and 3Y will be something that we would probably layer on top of. Okay, so I hope this presentation, I could get you a little bit closer to understanding the three different categories and why you would choose a certain category to get the desired aesthetic that you're looking for. Okay. Okay, I want to talk about the challenges that we have to face every day as a technician. I personally work with the DSLR, and now I work with another device that I will introduce to you guys. But DSLR photography and shade guides, it's a great tool to have, but I believe I am 100% that these tools, these different types of tools, shade guides, DSLRs, the gray cards, and all those things together, it's a bit technique sensitive in a sense where you need some time to get used to. You need to understand distance. You need to understand light when it comes to the DSLR photography. So these three cameras are the most common cameras that we use in dentistry. I personally have a Nikon. I really don't care which camera system my clients really use, but it's quite important that we have to understand and dial in the color differences and the lighting differences between the two cameras. So my client's camera and my camera. The camera obviously is quite expensive, and it takes some time and some effort to master and to understand even. Right. And what I found out that majority of the clinicians do not really have the true passion to master, DSLR photography, in my opinion. I've seen phenomenal photographers as a clinician, but majority, if you look at the big picture, I could say a bigger percentage don't really have the passion and don't really have the time to really practice and really dig into the DSLR to master that. And mastering the DSLR photography is quite important, especially in the past till now, to be honest, that we have to understand each side. So the clinician and the technician, we both have to come together quite often as possible to really exchange information and dial in so that we both have the same look, we both have the same goal, we both have the similar equipment in different distances and all those good things, right? So it's quite important. There's articles out there that the most common patient complaint about their smile is tooth color. And this is just pretty common sense because of the fact that our human perception is quite limited in looking at color as well as depth, right? We are very limited in depth. And if we position, this is almost like a double-edged sword. And I feel like we could benefit from these imperfections of our vision to take advantage of our imperfections and create some illusions so that what we see is, it becomes true when it really isn't, right? So understanding some of these phenomena are quite important. And I want to go over some of these color testing with you guys and experience all together what colors you guys see and what colors you guys don't. And understanding your own vision will will prep you to understand even more so into the limitations of human perception in color and also in depth, right? So doing single central has always been the hardest task for us as an aesthetic technician, right? Aesthetically, single centrals are the most tough because we are matching natural tooth, and natural tooth dentition, the light optics are very different than our materials are, like the ceramics, right? So the problems with shade guides, we have shade guides lined up with A1 through A4s, B1 through B3s, and such and forth. But when you see this shade guide in this slide, the how it's laid out is kind of all over the place. A1 is in the far left, B1 is right next to it, and obviously the darkest is a C4. And this orientation is made just to separate the color and value. So I believe I have much more control if I separate the value completely and color completely. So when I'm looking at shades, my very first thing I want to make sure that I have and I understand is the value match. So this shade tab that you see in this slide is organized in value. So if I put this in a black and white photo, you will see the brightest on the left and the darkest on the right. This is minus the color, okay? Once you get the value correct and you have your value shade target, then only then I will move on to the color, and I'm starting to look at chroma, right? So I have to break down into sections so that I have control in every section, and I'm not overwhelming my brain and my eyes to, get all this information all at the same time. So breaking into sections and attacking each section one by one is the most effective. And this is through a lot of learning curves, right? Through experiences, through a lot of failures. I've had a ton of failures, and I have failures today as well, but it's important for me to make that mistake and really address that mistake and own that mistake and be accountable and learn from it and fix as I go. So I hope and I wish not to make the same mistakes over and over. I would hate to be in that hamster, wheel where I'm running and I'm burning out and I'm having the same issues, right? So these are some of the main, the bigger problems and the main problems that we have to deal with. So pay attention to those things, and also, the batch discrepancies. So it's quite important if we really need to dial it in. My clients' shade guides and my shade guides, I have to understand that where is the difference and how much is that difference. So to be really precise, what we need to do in the past, I would ask my client to send me all their shade guides, and then I would measure on my own compared to my shade guides, and I would document the differences and such and such and such and all those stuff, right? And also in the from the clinical side, the angle of the shade tab is quite also important as well. You might not feel like it's important, but the distance, the angle, the positioning, is it in the same plane? Is it edge to edge? Is the body close? To be honest, I like the shade tab sideways instead of down like that you see in this slide. I like it sideways because this body, let's say this is the incisal edge, and the body is where I want to look at value first, right? So I want that body to be as close as possible to my target body, right? So those are the small nuances and details that you probably have to deal with, or you either make mistakes and you learn from it, or you deal with it over and over, or you fix and then you move on, right? So as you understand, as you go, you would start to find out that there are, doors of, could possibly go wrong in every step of the way, every single step of the way, right? And again, touching base on the visual genetics, some people don't see certain colors. Some people see shape a little bit different. We all see color and objects very differently. So understanding that fact, I started to really disbelieve. I started to really not believe in what I was seeing. So I would manually somehow measure what I was seeing and making sure that what I was seeing to be true. So I'm going to show you some of those steps that I've took to measure and how flawed our vision is by going through some testing with you guys. And I hope you guys enjoy this time and understand some of this and pick up some of these information so that you guys don't have to go through some of the painful mistakes that I've went through, okay? So our human perception, what majority of the color blindness that you see out there, they say the majority don't see red clearly. So that means intensity of red. I'm not saying just red in general, but intensity and the brightness of red is something that's more commonly problematic to human eye. So I want to kind of go over some of the testing with you guys. So if you look at these this circle of 4 pieces of blue, I want you guys to jot some of these down and go experience this game with me here and select the lightest shade of the blue. This is, I'm gonna give you guys some testing up to color so that you guys understand what some of the issues and some of the challenges that we have in perception in color by itself. So easiest to the hardest, I will start off with the easiest right here. Select the lightest shade of blue. And the correct one is on the right bottom corner. Next one, select the darkest shade of orange. Okay. So it's, now I've tested several people that I know with this test, and actually 3 out of 10 had this one wrong. Okay. This one, select the 2 identical shades of pink. This was very commonly mistaken as well. Okay. Which number or letter can you see within the purple dots? Okay. Next, which number or letter can you see within the orange dots? So these type of tests are very easy to find on Google. if you guys want to really dig into understanding your visions and your limitations of your vision in color. There are many tests out there that could make sure that you could kind of play around with and understand. Okay, this is the hardest one now. Which number or letter can you see within the red dots? I had this wrong. So I know that there are limitations. And out of 10 people that I've tested this with, um, none got 100% right. Okay. So I want you guys to test yourselves and understand this and kind of dig into this, because I felt like once I started to understand that there are all these flaws of human perception and my perception, I started to really dig in and I started to understand my limitations. And with understanding my limitations, I was able to create a workaround to balance some of the discrepancies that I have in my vision. Okay, so they say this is the study, 44 to 65% of ceramic crowns don't match. So now this presentation really goes beyond MiYO and the ceramic and whatever material that we are using. It's all together. If we are trying to match a natural tooth, 44 to 65% don't match. This is quite high. And that's why there are the master single central technicians out there that are getting, a lot of praise of. But some of these guys really experience these flaws themselves and really addressed it. And they most likely understood exactly where they were going wrong, and they segmented all their issues and addressed those issues and fixed those issues one by one. And once they addressed all their issues and fixed it and controlled it, they are able to replicate the aesthetic results that they really desired for a long time, right? So this is Melissa. We had this case. This is my very good client, my partner, Miles Cohn. He's in Maine. He is a great dental dentist that takes a lot of these photos for me. He really gets all the information that I request him. So I've been very blessed to have him as a partner and to have certain kind of cases, experimental cases that we learn from each other. Okay, so this is an old crown that we replaced. So this is the typical color measurement and color analysis that I take to do. So I ask my client, Miles, for this case, I would ask him to take a closest shade sideways, closest to my target tooth. In this case is the lower centrals. So an OM3 and a 1M1 seem to be the closest. So with this photo, what do I have to do? So just to kind of point a couple things out, these shade photos, I cannot have reflection right on the middle of the shade tab. I can't have reflection right on the target tooth. I need to see certain areas, which is the body 1/3 of the natural tooth and the body 1/3 of the shade tab without any reflection, so that I could truly see the color and not the reflection itself. So what would I do here? I would digitally cut this little piece in the center of the shade tab, which is the most direct view of my eyes. And then I would digitally move over to my target tooth to see the measurements. So this is what I would do. I've probably done this for the past 9 years, I could say. And this has been such a pain. And once I opened my lab, I asked all my clients not to send me any single centrals because of these reasons. Because I knew that if I want to, deliver an exceptional result, I have to do these things and I have to make sure what I'm seeing is true, because I know what I'm seeing is never really true. So getting rid of the white lines, outside lines, you really get to see the difference between my target tooth and then the strip that I cut out from the shade guide. So this is the free color meter that you could download from an application store on your app store, right? So with this, once you download the classic color meter and you open it up, you're gonna see that window where you will see the LAB numbers. So as you move your cursor, you're gonna see all the LAB numbers exactly where your cursor is. So from here, I get to really measure the difference between the shade tab strip and then the target tooth, and try to match that as much as close as possible. So you could see that every step of the way, every layer, I would take a photo because I'm not 100% sure. I would take a photo and then I would do this measurements and then I will write this down. And then next layer, I will do another one of these. So for me, I did a little bit overkill just so that I could completely eliminate my flaws, right? And so once I started to really understand this concept of understanding and seeing colors through numbers, it just made much more sense for me rather than looking at it under a controlled light or taking the patient outside the clinic to see the color or whatever we used to do, right? So color analysis through numbers. I really need to touch base and really get into explaining what an LAB really means and what the delta E means. Okay, LAB. I'm guessing most of you already know this, but for some of you that don't know this, L is the value, is the density. L has really nothing to do with the colors. I want you guys to see value as a separate entity, a separate category, okay? And A is red, means color red, and B is color yellow, okay? With the combination of these three categories, and as you control these three categories, you are able to match a natural dentition with much effectiveness, right? So what is the delta E really stand for? Delta E is a single number that represents the distance between two colors. So distance between your target tooth and then your restoration. So that's a delta E. Obviously, we want to ultimately get to a delta E0, but there are some give there. So I want to explain a little bit of that as well. So delta E1 is pretty much undetectable with our human eyes. Of course, if we take a cross-polarized photo and we really measure, blow it up in a big computer screen and measure that, you're going to see the discrepancy. But with our naked eye in everyday environment, you will not see the delta E1 and up to delta E2, right? Beyond delta E2, you're going to start to see the discrepancies, okay? 95%, they say delta E4 is visually acceptable. 95%. I believe delta E4 is not acceptable. Maybe for more of the production scene, maybe that might be an acceptable result, but delta E4 you definitely can't see with your naked eye. Okay, obviously delta E10 is a remake. Okay, so our goal is to get as close to delta E0 as possible, but there are some different numbers. So there are the value numbers, there are the red, there are the yellow. Okay, so as you increase the red, you're going to decrease yellow, and as you increase yellow, you're going to decrease red. You're going to see a balancing act that's happening as you're increasing the L values or decreasing the L value or increasing the A's and the B's. You're going to see that discrepancy kind of go, that counterbalancing each other. So in the beginning, I tend to kind of give myself a blueprint of where I need to go and how many steps I'm going to take to get there. And in between the steps, I will measure and I will make sure the number is at a good place, at an optimal place, so that my next step will be getting closer to my target shade. Okay, so I would explain a little bit better as I go. So with that same technique, without with the shade tab sideways, doing the digital measurements, doing the digital try-ins through a Keynote or any kind of app that you are familiar with. Once I establish my target number and my target shade, I have chose this zirconia, which is a Jensen's 4Y zirconia. It was an unshaded zirconia. I obviously, you could see that I added a little bit of chroma on the gingiva area and some enamel liquid on the incisal corners. And then this is really my cutback. And this is the MiYO powder ceramic. I applied a little bit of combination in opacious dentins, a little bit of dentins and some enamel effects so that I could get the underlying my dentin structure before my enamel layer. And then from here, the freedom and the biggest benefit of having a MiYO powder ceramic is the usage of combinations of MiYO liquid ceramic and the powder. So you are able to, you can apply MiYO color on the coping or on your zirconia, apply a little bit of ceramic. You could apply a little bit of MiYO on top of it. You could keep doing the sandwich effect if you really need to, okay? So there is a freedom of using both sides of the spectrum. A lot of the times, if I, depending on the patient, I would choose a full monolithic route with MiYO's liquid ceramics. Sometimes for this type of case, a little bit more demanding with the aesthetics, then I would do a ceramic. Or if the position and I have enough space, I would choose the ceramic. If I don't have enough space, or let's, for example, say it's a screw retained crown and the screw channel is a little bit more facial and I cannot cut back, then I will go with the MiYO liquid ceramic. So depending on the patient, I tend to choose my restoration. I'm not just a MiYO guy. I'm not just a ceramic guy. I am a dental technician. I like to use all my spectrum of my arsenal to get the final outcome the way I want to. Okay, so from here with my first dentin fire, I do some adjustments, and then I applied MiYO liquid ceramic colors to get a little bit of effects going, and then I fired this, and then from here you could do more MiYO liquid ceramic if you need. For this case, I moved on to the enamel layer. I used about 3 different type of enamels and a little bit of dentin colors to create some of that halo effect. And then once this is done, this was finished on the model, and this was in the patient's mouth. So this was the typical color measuring and color analysis, the steps that I used to take. It's not just a simple shade tab. It's not, on a lap slip, my clinician will never say A1 because there's no such teeth that has just A1, right? So there's multiple colors. So for my case, this is the typical route that I took, and it was quite a lot of work, but learned a lot, understood a lot, and I was really wishing and hoping for something that could balance these challenges that we have to face every day, right? So this was the final result. This was, I believe, after 2 weeks of delivery. Pretty decent result. I could see some of the flaws, but this is normal. We learn from it and we get a little bit better. I hope I get a little bit better every single time. So there are the issues and the challenges with controlling the DSLRs and the equipments that we have to do, understanding that, mastering that, the issues and the challenges with shade guides, the different batches and position of the shade guides, the distance between your target tooth and the angle of the shade guides, all that together. And also, the harsh fluorescent lights that we have to deal with. Some offices have yellow lights. Some offices have white lights. We have to understand some of these things and we have to control this. So fluorescent lights is good. Color corrected lights is great, but also the surrounding colors is quite important as well. So if your wall is yellow, if your wall is green, then you're going to get that influence of color within the light itself. So this is a big challenge. So if you guys ever build a lab or build a clinic, we have to create a neutral color wall, right? I prefer a white. That is simple. Okay. So color surroundings could be the wall, could be the color of your gloves. It could be the color of your retractors. Is your retractor a solid color or is it translucent? Is it clear to translucent? Does it have color with translucency? All that makes effect, and it affects the final color of what we are seeing with our eyes, either with our eyes or with our cameras, right? So we have to understand this and we have to control this. And correction of neutral gray cards. I've had a really expensive mistake and I've had a very expensive experience with the neutral gray cards. If you guys are using a neutral gray card, make sure your clinician and your gray card is the exact same match. If there is a discrepancy, make sure that what that discrepancy is so that you don't get that mismatch. So I've had a case here I want to kind of go over. This was a case that I've done maybe, I believe 2 years ago. This was in the beginning state where I was really starting to study how to see color with numbers. So this was a very tough experience for me. This case I have done 3 times. The first 2 times, the gray cards and the measurements that I've made on my side was, I felt that it was very accurate. And the first 2 times when I sent the restoration back, it was way off. So I was getting very frustrated by the 3rd time. And on the 3rd time, what I've done was we did a bisque try. And during that bisque try, I have sent my gray card to my clinician. And he took all the shade photos with this bisque try-in. This bisque try-in is before the final enamel layer that I was gonna layer on top. So this was maybe 0.2, 0.3 in less thickness to the final contour. And you can see that number 7 is not really seating all the way, but it's good enough so that I could gather the information that I need to gather. So I sent them my gray card. He tried in my crowns and took the same photos with my gray card. And then again, he took with his own gray card. And then he sent me back the crowns, my gray card, and his gray card. And when I measured his gray card and my gray card, the numbers were off. So that was a very expensive experiment that I've experienced at that time. But because of those things, you have to really address and really understand your gray cards. Do not assume that it's 100% match with every client, okay, that has their own gray cards. Okay, so with this case, what I've done when I got this case back, so I pretty much did the same. I manually colored measured all the spots that I felt like it was critical. So like the cervical 1/3, where there is a lot of that pink influence from the gingiva, I felt like it was very important for me to understand and see the difference. So the delta E of the value, I'm 1.2 value points higher than my target tooth, which is exactly what I want. I want higher value and a little bit less color. So I need to decrease the value to get to the target and increase the red 4.3 and increase the yellow 8.8. Now you have to remember when you apply red, you're going to decrease yellow. And when you increase yellow, you're going to decrease red, right? and the value also fluctuates depending on how much and how intense that you're applying. Okay, so that's the difference on that cervical 1/3 and the body 1/3, which is really the denser area of this tooth. I see the different delta E's of all LABs, incisal edge positions. You know, some those three are the general critical areas, and I've done the same thing with the laterals as well. And imagine all those measurements, every single firing that I'm doing, I'm measuring, I'm writing this down at the end of this 2-unit case that I finished in one day, one full day it took me to do these 2 units. After I was done, my whole bench was covered in Post-it notes. I had no idea what was what. So so once I get this BizTry case back, what I've done was understanding all the delta E's first, and then I did the digital measurements. So I put it onto my color die of the central, and then on the number 7 is on a custom zirconia abutment. So I put it right on there so that I could get the true influence from the underneath. And then with the gray card, I did the measurements. So I calibrated these 2 photos together. And then I made all the adjustments that I had to make, the delta E's. I've addressed that. I increased the red, I increased the yellow, decreased the value. This is all internal with MiYO liquid ceramic. And then once this was fired, I wanted to make sure that what the adjustments I made was the correct one. So I did a digital cut, and then I did a digital try-in. So only when this happens, I feel comfortable. Okay, now I know that these numbers are correct. Now I need a proof during the final try-in or during the delivery. So I sent this crown back as it was. I finished with the enamel layer, covered all the MiYO colors internally, covered it with the enamel layer with the MiYO powder ceramic. And then once this was done, I sent that back. This was my clinician's, my partner clinician took his cross-polarized photo to get the correct, so that we could see what I have done wrong or what we can improve in the future. So very good, in my opinion. I was very satisfied. I know that I did a lot of work just for these 2 units, but I learned so much from it. So I was very, very happy for this result. Okay, but I'm still telling my clients not to send me these single centrals because of these reasons, because I cannot let things go like that. I cannot say I could match an A1 and I will match that too. So I told them not to send me. I continued at that time not to tell my clients not to send me single centrals. Okay, so another challenge that we have to really address and really deal with is the effect of time on tooth dehydration and rehydration. So a lot of the times the dehydration happens within 60 seconds to 2 minutes. I personally seen patient that dehydrates teeth within like 15, 30 seconds. So this is also another challenge. So time for an upgrade, right? I was waiting for this moment for years. I've been talking to some of my friends, sharing some of the frustrations that I have to deal with, and been waiting for something to happen. And I feel very fortunate that I've been part of. I am part of development, and I will be training on this new device. It's called the OptiShade. It's by SmileLine, and this is the light at the end of the tunnel that I believe majority of the technicians and majority of labs been waiting for. It's a plug-in to your phone. It only has one button, okay? So it's quite dummy proof. So this was our first 2 cases that I've done with the OptiShade and partnered with Miles from Maine. I've never seen these patients addressing some of those issues that I've addressed previously with the retractors, the surrounding colors. I asked Miles to switch over the retractor to a black one so that it does not influence any color to the photography that we need, right? So with this case, there's some implants. There are few key photos. For this case, for example, this was a screw retained, a cement retained single implant. And for this case, there is no substructure, there is no stump. So I really only need one photo, which is this. And with the OptiShade, you want to position it in the center of the tooth and take one photo and send me that file via with the text or email directly from your phone. And then from there, I upload it into my Matisse software, which is the formula. It'll give me a formula, the ceramic formula to your acrylic formula to create the color delta model that which I'm going to show. So the ceramic formula, exactly this. It shows me once I type in how much space I have, what kind of restoration I want, what kind of ceramic that I'm using. It will give me the formula. This is the MiYO powder formula that I've got. And then from here, I trust this material, this formula, and then I use exactly that to create my tooth. And before that, this is quite important. I call this the color delta model. This is made with Anextent acrylic and some combinations of pink wax. Okay, so the Matisse software will also give you a formula to make this model. Okay, 4-part, Denton 1 and 2-part white Denton to create the closest shade of the target tooth. And from here, I do all the measurements. So since it was my first experience, every step of the way, I did the measurement again. But now I do not have to calibrate any photos. I just take the photo with my OptiShade, upload it onto my phone, and I'm able to live time move the target and get the correct LAB that I'm looking for and get the different positions all at the same time, all in one seating. So it required me to do some coloring on the coping. And what I've done was I applied MiYO liquid ceramic, some colors for the coping so that I'm starting to get closer to my target LAB every step of the way. Okay. And every step of the way, I'm able to take a photo with my OptiShade on my Delta color model and measure and compare directly on my phone. And now this is the new addition to the Matisse software. This is the Enamel Studio. Let's, for example, say I have everything except the enamel. Now you could choose the enamel ceramic on the bottom list and then drag it on top of your tooth, and then you could see those bars on the bottom that I'm adjusting there. That is the millimeter, that is the thickness of that ceramic. So you could know exactly how much thickness that you're applying and how much effect that you are going to add on top of what you already have. So there are many things, and it's the Matisse. We are continuing to develop. We are continuing to add new helping tools to get us there easier, so that this is a very, very exciting time. So as you can see here on the left side, this was after my first enamel layer. I did the measurement again, and then you could get as many formulas that you want, ceramic recipes you want on mamelons, your corners, your halo colors, your pink color, or whatever effects that you want. You could create a point and then create a recipe for that. So once my crown was finished, I make sure before I send my crown out to my clinician, I make sure all the targets are quite good. my delta E was below 2.0, that you could see the delta E in the middle side right there. And just you also see the color of that exact spot in the middle section. If you don't see a borderline right in this middle, then you got a pretty good match. Okay, the LAB of my target tooth is on the bottom, LAB of my restoration is on the top, right? Quite easy to understand. Okay, so body incisor, I make sure the target is quite close, LAB is close. My goal is to always to get to delta E0, but it's quite difficult for me to do that now, but I hope one day I could get there as well. So those are some of the areas that I felt like I needed to measure and make sure the is the match, because those are the points are attracted to, right? I spend quite a lot of time on texture. Light scatter is very important. It's in addition to control your final LAB numbers. Okay, so texture, just a tip. I noticed that a lot of lab technicians have their lights above their eyes, right? To see texture a little bit better, I would recommend to lower the lights below your eyes and then get close to your target of the tooth so that you could see the shadows much easier. In that way, you will see the texture much better and control that much better. So this was the final result. It was a difficult case because of the gingiva position, but it was very, I learned a ton and got me really excited for the future of color matching in dentistry. Okay. Final results. Next patient. Okay, so this is Sam. This is another single central. It's a pretty difficult case. It had a very translucent low value band right above that dense area of that gingiva 1/3. This is Cornelia. This is Miles's wife, lovely wife. She is able to take this off the shade photo for us. Like so, you could see there's only one button, there's no distance, there's no lighting. So you put it right onto the tooth, under the middle of the tooth, you take one photo, and then you are good, as long as the photo is on the center of the tooth, right? And then you can see if you're not using an OptiShade for some reason, I mean, if you're not using Matisse for some reason, now you have an option to upload your shade guides and then get as close as possible to the shade guide, okay? So for key photos for this case, I need 2 key photos, actually 3. 2 from OptiShade and 1 from either a phone photo or a DSLR photo, okay? A phone photo or a DSLR photo is really, to me, I believe it's necessary so that I could see a reflection shot of the photo that you could see on the right side. That's all I need to see. I need a reflection shot, okay? Because the OptiShade is a cross-polarized photo. So with the OptiShade, a target tooth, and then the stump photo. For this case, I only had maybe 0.9 thickness, 0.9 millimeter thickness, 1 millimeter at the most. So then once I got this correct photos, I uploaded into my Matisse software, which will give me the whole formula of zirconia structures. Do we need internal colors on the zirconia? The zirconia mixtures to match the cervical 1/3, body, incisal 1/3, and the enamel layer as well, okay? So with that said, I create the color delta model, again, according to what I see in the natural tooth, right? And I got quite lucky here. I got pretty close. The one on the right side is my handmade model, and on one on the left side is the clinical, the real stump. And from here, I get the measurements, so I know the difference between the two. the two, my model and the intraoral situation. And then from here, I start to move forward. So I kind of go over and see the delta E's everywhere in the position and then move forward. So this was my finished restoration. Once I finish the restoration, again, I make sure some of those key points, the low value area, the dense area, the gingival 1/3, the incisal 1/3, where there are some pinkish hue to it and some bluish hue to it. There is a nice gradation. There is some interesting things happening. So all those things I measure before I send my crown. And once I verify on my end, that is it. I know that this crown is going to get delivered. Okay. So I personally guarantee my shade matches. And I've started to guarantee that shade match since I believe last year, November. Okay. So far I have done maybe around 10 cases, and all 10 cases were a success. There was no bis tries. There's no second crowns that I've made or third crowns. My clinicians, my partner clinicians' chair time is very important to me. So this has been a gigantic eye opener, and very, very excited for the near future. So texture, okay. Cleaning the zirconia. I recommend cleaning the zirconia with Zirclean or Ivoclean, whatever you like. I personally like Zirclean. It leaves a really nice clean surface to your zirconia underlying the inside of the zirconia, right? Okay, and this was a high translucent zirconia. Very, very odd formula and the odd recipe that I did not believe that it was true. I was talking to, you know, the developer, Murat, my friend. I was like, Murat, this is impossible. This is not, this is the wrong zirconia to start off. And he asked me, James, just trust it, try it. If it doesn't work, you know, I'll compensate for that, you know. And so I went on with it. When I finished the case and measured the number, and then when it got delivered, I was blown away. I would never use a 5Y zirconia as an underlying structure to match a single central, right? So something interesting there. So this was the final one on the right side. These photos are really for us to really evaluate, document, and for me to really learn from my mistakes. So I want to capture all the mistakes that I've done, I've created here. It's never perfect, but I got very, very close. And I was very excited because there was no best try. I didn't have to make a second crown or a third crown. I was never really nervous about it anymore. So this was the final restoration with the reflection shot so that you could see more of live results. Okay, the polarized shot, really to be critical on my end, I felt like to be critical, the dense area, that gingival 1/3 was a little bit too opaque, a little bit too dense, but was very, very good match. Patient was very excited, very, very happy. Everybody was happy. I was excited, and we are all good, happy group, right? So these were the final results. And to end, before we end our session of our webinar today, I want to give you a sneak peek of what's going to be coming in the Matisse software. Obviously, we have the MiYO powder ceramic that's being launched. I'm very excited for that. I'm sure you guys all will be excited for that. The combination between a monolithic and a ceramic, and you could do together and all those things. With lithium disilicate, the ceramic will be very compatible with lithium disilicate to zirconia, and MiYO liquid ceramic to the powder ceramic, and we're in good times now. So this case right here was done on a monolithic restoration. It was number 8 and number 9. Number 8 was screw retain restoration. Number 9 was a crown. This was 100% monolithic on a 4Y zirconia. The texture was finished with the MiYO liquid ceramic structure material to finish off, but Matisse will soon, in the near future, will have the MiYO liquid ceramic and the MiYO powder embedded in the Matisse software. Okay, be excited. So this was my final measurement of the tooth. Okay. So one day, hopefully we could do a perfect match without all the pain that we have to go through and all the learning curve. I hope that I didn't stutter too much, and I hope I gave you guys some of the information, necessary information that that makes you guys better technicians tomorrow. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, James. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think everybody who joined us or will join us, understands the importance of accuracy and color and communication, to achieve the aesthetic outcome that the patient wants, that you want, that the doctor wants. And I know that optically, the material plays a role in that, obviously, right? So we're excited about the combination of MiYO liquid ceramic and a MiYO, you like to say powdered ceramic, which I think is fine. We say layered ceramic too, right? It's not that really one replaces the other. Is that fair? And I know I've got a few questions here from some folks that may touch on that, but you're really utilizing these two together to accomplish your end objective, correct?
Yeah, every single case. Every
So-
single case, whether that is on a zirconia or a lithium disilicate, monolithic or layered, or even refractory veneers, I use both every single time.
Okay. So one of the questions that came in along the way is, do you use the MiYO porcelain, and I think they mean the powder, more for scattering light or for hitting the shade and detail? So I think they're maybe asking the question is, what's the purpose of the powdered ceramic versus the liquid?
It's really for me, it really depends on the target and the space and the situation of that patient. If the target has a lot of effects on the tooth that I need to match, then to be honest, layered really is not necessary in my opinion. If there's a lot of effects, I tend to do more MiYO liquid ceramic. If there is, if my target restoration is clean, young, it has these opalescence, not a lot of character, then I usually tend to kind of shift more towards the layered ceramic. But that all depends also depending on the space availability, the position of the tooth. How much space do we have occlusally? How much space do we have facially? Is there an influence from the stump that I need to consider or not? All those things play a role, and I make the decision from the beginning.
Okay, and that may play into the next question I have, which is, on average, when using the two together, MiYO liquid ceramic and MiYO powdered ceramic, what's your average thickness? Does that make sense?
Yeah, so MiYO liquid ceramic, obviously I don't cut back anything. MiYO powder ceramic, typically anywhere between 0.6 to 0.9.
Okay.
I usually don't go over 1, but there are times when I do go over 1 in cutback because of that depth or some of the effects that I want to create. Maybe, those are the only times that I would do an extra cutback, but I personally don't think we really need more than 1 millimeter of cutback.
Okay.
To be honest.
And I know we're finalizing the product offering, and I'm sure everybody's excited to hear more about that. Just touching briefly on what components make up the MiYO powdered ceramic versus liquid. Do you want to? And somebody asked, are they matched components, right? So is it the same name like, say, MiYO Smoke in liquid ceramic? Is there a MiYO Smoke in powdered? And it might not be a super easy question to answer in a short amount of time, but why don't you give it a shot?
Yeah, I mean, we've made some modifiers. We added some, quite a lot of, modifiers that could, and then we readdressed the opal as well. But there are the translations between the liquid ceramic colors into the powder as well as the modifiers that we created in the past. I think there will be some combinations. There
Yep.
are a lot of discussions there, right, Kev?
Yep. Yep.
What?
Yeah, there is, I know we'll be transferring some of the colors, right, that exist in MiYO liquid ceramic, of course, into the layered. But we've also got dentin, we've got enamels, right? It's a fairly broad offering when you look at the entire family of product. But I think the intention is to be minimally layered. And I know that's a relative term, what is minimal, but that's the intention. So I think there will be a lot of freedom, right, for technicians to choose the powdered ceramic materials versus the liquid ceramic, and how to complement those two together. So one other question, and I know it's 4:07, and you were great on your time. You landed exactly on cue, which is great. So the question is, do you have to apply MiYO colors first and then layer MiYO porcelain over it, or can you do it the other way around?
You could do it other way around. You could do it you could do it internally on the zirconia and then layer on top, and then you could do more MiYO on top, MiYO colors on top, and then layer on top. You could do what you want.
Okay.
That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
Make it your own.
Even more than
Right.
before, right?
Right.
So I think there was another question here about structure. So let's see. So do you ever use MiYO structure with MiYO layered porcelain, and why?
I've done that before. So I've done a ceramic restoration, and in the past, typically after it's glazed and I need to make some adjustments, I would use some correction material to add maybe some line angles or some corners in here and there. But I tried the structure material on a finished ceramic restoration just to try it, to create a completely different texture and even change the form, and it works perfectly. So I believe the structure can be used in versatile ways, in many ways. I definitely use structure for correction material as well as the way it's originally designed to create the surface texture.
Okay.
So it's quite nice to have different ways of applying.
Gotcha. Yeah, great. Thank you. My friend Ryan, hi Ryan, asked a question through the Q&A. It usually comes up in your presentation, James. What 4Y zirconia does Jensen offer? And I'll touch on that a little bit, and then you can jump on that if you like. You're laughing, I know why. So Ryan, as one of the co-developers of MiYO, James has access to a lot of materials that are in development. One of those materials is a 4Y zirconia that I think, James, you happen to be a super big fan of.
Yes.
Which we won't get into all the details. It's not commercially available yet, but Ryan, if you want to talk about it, we can give you a ring after. I think it does absolutely have some unique features, both in color matching and some of the flexibility you have with the zirconia. But James, you've tested a lot of zirconias. I know you use a lot of different kinds, but that product I know you keep coming back to and praising it. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. And there's many reasons, but one of the most biggest reason that I am asking you guys to I'm almost begging you guys to release that, is because I've never seen zirconia that match a C2 or a D2 or a B2 or a B3. This zirconia that I've seen from Jensen is very accurate with the Vita Classic. So I've seen a D2 that looked like a D2 and a C2, C3 that looked like a C3. So this is something that we've been missing in this industry for more than 10 years.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say, and a lot of people are probably thinking, why are you teasing us with that? But I would tell you that, you know, in order to be great at something and to be an outlier in something you're focused on, it takes a lot of work behind the scenes. There's a lot of testing, there's a lot of trial. You all know that. So we're constantly working on materials, not just substrate like zirconia, but also in pushing the envelope with MiYO. And I think the powdered ceramic is a good example of that we're excited about, and I know we'll see it in the second half of this year. So we're excited about that. And Brian, and anybody else interested in the zirconia, we'll certainly keep you in the loop on that. If that's something that comes to be, we hope it is. I know James hopes it is, that's for sure. But James, thank you for your time. We really appreciate you taking the time with us and kind of letting us to enter your brain and know what you're thinking through your presentation and the words that you tied to it. So thank you for joining us today, James. I hope everybody enjoyed it, and we will talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to really share my experiences and my failures. We're all in this journey together. So I'm excited. I'm excited for all of it. I'm excited for Jensen. And so, yeah, thank you for the time and thank you for being here. Thank you for watching me stutter throughout this hour. And I hope I see every one of you guys in the near future.
Maybe Lab Day West will be there, and I think you'll be sharing some more of this type of thing there. I also encourage you, you talk about a journey. Kite Sato is a technician from Arkansas. Encourage you to, if you haven't joined or signed up for his presentation Thursday, 2 days from now at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, encourage you to do that. You can do it on miyoworld.com. Kite's going to share his journey, which I think is going to be pretty exciting. So hope you can join us. And thanks again, James, and everybody for being with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Take care. See ya.
Bye.